This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for episode 24 of Cooking with Grief, the show where our two hosts attempt to surprise and enlighten each other with interesting facts from around the world. My name's Chris, and as is our tradition, let me introduce you to my co-host, who is also called Chris.
I'm also called Chris.
Hi Chris, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Also very well.
We are totally the same person.
You might not be aware of this, viewers, but we've actually just been performing an elaborate piece of performance art, and it's only ever been one Chris putting on different voices.
And yet I still insist on having, a sort of puppet Chris to sort of vocalise the other voice part.
Yeah, exactly.
Get your hand out my arse! Quiet other Chris.
Alright, well, we've been how many seconds in, and things have already taken a weird turn.
I can only apologise. I lasted a whole minute before I made it weird.
Yeah, thank you. I say thank you as if I wasn't talking to myself.
I'm welcome.
Anyway, a quick rundown of the format. We've each got two topics. The other, Chris. Alright, let's just leave the performance art thing to one side for clarity. Each of us have brought two topics. The other Chris has not heard the other Chris's topic, and so it will come as a complete surprise to him, and by extension, hopefully, our listeners. And without further ado, let's go on to your first topic, Chris.
So for my first topic this episode, I want to talk about captures.
About what?
Captures, like on websites when it asks you to type out two unrelated words in a weird font to prove that you're not a robot. Well, did you know that the data gathered from completing them helps to digitize old books and documents?
Is that why it's so
squiggly?
So weird, yeah. Squiggly, that's the technical term I was looking for.
Yeah. The fun thing is that around 150 books and documents are digitized every day thanks to capture, because worldwide every day there are 1 million typed in. And because computers struggle to read old handwritten documents, it all goes to a bit of software called reCAPTCHA, which teaches them how to read, to use the technical term again, squiggly font and things, old handwriting, things like S's that look like F's or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
There's a guy called Louis van Arn who invented the captcha, and then later, wondering, if he could do something useful with all of this stuff. It was intended originally just to be a way of differentiating between bot hackers and real-life humans using the website. So he made reCAPTCHA to put it all to good use.
Oh, that's clever. What a clever chap.
Yeah, it's a good thing that I hadn't really thought of.
Now, a lot of the time, those capture things aren't typing stuff in. They're, click, prove you're not a robot, and then it's like, select all the squares that have traffic lights. Do you reckon they're doing the same thing? Like, they're teaching robots what a shop looks like.
Well, I think so, and I think it's probably useful. Stuff like Facebook is trying to learn to tag people automatically or to recognise facial patterns and things, which is...
Could that not screw itself over, though? Because if the whole thing is, I am not a robot, click, but then we teach the robots how to trick the I am not a robot page, then that's basically Terminator.
Almost certainly all of this stuff will be used against us one day. And as our future robotic overlords scan through all the digital archives of humanity, I just want to go on the record and say I welcome our android overlords and would make a fine footstool. Hog roast. Actually, no, that's a bad thing to want to be.
Don't.
I will clean rust.
We'll clean rust for food.
Oh, dance for money, clean rust for food. Those are my terms.
And the robot overlords scan our digital archives. They'd just be like, why is there so much porn? Like, that's it, press the nuke.
And to be fair, could we really argue against them? If their argument is, look, you are the most evolved species on this planet, and you spend so much this time watching and thinking about other hairless apes bonk. Can you not do something more productive? You're watching porn now, aren't you? Even while I'm giving you this lecture as a robot, you're watching... Sorry, I am. Yeah, I got distracted.
Yeah, but like the immediate thing was the robot would look at it and be like, you know what? This is actually a pretty interesting market. So robot porn will be my new invention, and then he'll become king of the robots.
Yeah, I mean, how soon into the robot invasion is there like erotic fan art of our new Terminators? You know,
Let's be honest, it will probably predate
yeah,
the invasion.
I'm sure if you search for Terminator on Rule 34, then
yeah, exactly.
Is that what it's called, or Rule 43, something like that?
34.
He says, desperately trying to sound like he doesn't know exactly what he's talking about. Yeah, is it 43, 44, something like that? I'm sure there's some sort of...
Like, what do you call this? What's that website? Pornhub? Pornhub, is that the one? I of course, have never visited it, so I wouldn't know, but Pornhub sounds about right.
Yes, exposedankles.org. I'm going to trail off now to sound wistful rather than just mentally scanning what I'm going when I'm hauled before the robot courts, going, you know, what questionable thing did I search for that's going to be my undoing? And that's not something I'm going to speculate on out loud.
Yeah, weirdly, the actual answer was something to do with the location of the Ark of the Covenant.
But the porn version of it.
Oh, that actually exists.
What
in Diana Jones. Anyway, back on topic to...
Oh, yeah. Captures.
I believe we're talking something about captures, yeah. Obviously, you've got to digitize these things so you can search them.
Mm-hmm.
But before you can do that, you have to put it onto a computer. I actually know somebody who did. They said it was the most boring job they've ever done. But they worked for a digitizing company, and they literally do just have to... They have one of those... Because obviously you can't damage these old books, so you can't rip them apart and just feed them in. So apparently it's literally like, you do a page, scan it, you know, one of those flatbed scanners, flick the page, scan, flick the page, scan, for like 400-page books, and then once you've done one book, it's like, right, next.
Yeah.
Apparently, yeah, it's just that going on, and like, not just necessarily old books either, but like, you know, things that are like useful. But obviously, lots of companies, any company that's been around for longer than 30 years, had most of their things in paper form. You know, all the old accounts and stuff, which need to be preserved. So again, yeah, companies just hiring people to literally just scan just mountains and mountains of documents.
One thing that the company Recapture have already done, so they've archived every issue of the New York Times going back to 1851, copies of which are either, you know, deteriorated with age or use a less, you know, easy to be read by computer font. But like you said, like the downside of that is someone has had to scan every single page of every single issue of the New York Times for over 150 years. Daily
newspaper as well. I mean, if we could be bothered, we could probably work out how many issues that is.
I couldn't. It is if every issue was a let's say a tin of soup, you'd have to really like soup to get through it all in one sitting.
Exactly.
Just to put it in some kind of perspective for you. You're welcome. But on the plus side, if aliens ever invade and want to destroy our modern equivalent of the Library of Alexandria, is that easier or harder to destroy the digital, you know, the collective digital knowledge of the human race?
It's kind of both, in that it's decentralized now with the internet. Like, obviously stuff's on servers, but like most servers are backed up and
can
stuff
exist
like
in
that.
multiple places. Yeah.
But then on the other hand, like, you know, you hear about companies and stuff that had to keep old stuff just going. Like even stuff like the US military. Like I think even now, or at least like 5 or 10 years ago, maybe even still now, their nuclear missile systems were all on floppy disks.
Yeah.
Because once you've written it on that, you can't. You know, it's very hard to like translate it into a new format, which meant they've had to keep all these old computers around that have like definitely gone past that like normal shelf life. So you sort of have that, and like, you know, if something was only saved on a floppy disk, you'd have a hard time finding somewhere to like extract the information from now. And going forward, like, you know, if you have stuff on CDs, I mean, most laptops now don't even have CD drives.
Yeah, it is weird how quickly, you know, people clinging to their cassettes going, no, one day I'll get them all converted to MP3s. No, you won't.
Exactly.
So that's my first topic. Chris, what's yours?
All right, well, I'm going to take you back a few decades to the height of the Cold War in the late 60s and the early 70s.
Ooh.
And just to show how stupidly rich the Americans were, and also how crazy the entire thing was. So, basically, as you're probably well aware, Cold War, Russia and America, not exactly getting on. You know, they had secret submarines and stuff all around the world, both sides, constantly, you know, in sort of clandestine operations, that type of thing, you know, just off the grid, off the map, not really like, you know...
playing by the rules.
Yeah, and obviously back then as well, you sort of didn't have the... well, I don't know, to be honest, if I'm not exactly an expert on military capabilities, but, you know, if you had a submarine in the middle of the ocean, even if it was on your side, they're hard to track. Like, unless they want to be found, the ocean's a big place and very difficult to track through, like, radar and stuff like that. So, that's, like, just setting the scene. So, in 1968, a Russian submarine by the catchy name of K-129, it sank somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. The reason I mentioned about how hard it was to track even for your own side was the Russians didn't actually know exactly where it sank. It was, you know, it was sort of in radio silence mode because, you know, they were always sort of undercover,
keeping it secret,
so to speak.
yeah.
So they were so off the grid that even the Russians didn't know exactly where they were. You know, they were expecting it to clock in every few days, and it didn't, and that's when they knew it was missing. Obviously, though, when you're in a situation where your enemies are sending submarines and stuff all about, you're also trying to track them at the same time. And the Americans had actually managed to track this submarine, and they sort of worked it out by, like, basically, they knew something had gone wrong when the Russians started sending, like, search and rescue teams to the Pacific Ocean. And then they looked through their data, because they have, you know, ocean monitoring stations, to, like, you know, hydroacoustics listening stations and seismic stations and stuff like that. And they went through their data and found there'd been an explosion, or, you know, a signal that corresponded to an explosion, and were able to pinpoint where this Russian submarine had sank. And now this is where it gets crazy. They didn't tell the Russians where it was, because they wanted to recover an enemy submarine with all its nuclear missiles and enemy technology and all that. But they also couldn't let the Russians know that they were searching for it themselves. So they made up one of the most elaborate cover stories in human history. So what they did, they called it Project Azorian, which is a pretty cool name. No idea what Azorian means, but it sounds cool. And what they did was they started by spreading rumours and false science, and even hosting, like, conferences about panning for minerals on the ocean floor.
That's a bold first step.
I mean, like, when this is step one, you know your plan's gonna be, you know it's gonna be a big one. So they started with, like, a misinformation campaign on, like, a global scale about how the manganese globules on the ocean floor, which I think manganese globules are, like, a real useful mineral, but whether or not there are quantities of them to make deep sea mining, like, a viable thing is heavily debatable. They started off by making up false research showing that the ocean floor was basically littered in these important minerals, and it was definitely worth starting up ocean floor mines, basically. And then they got Howard Hughes involved, because, you know, all good stories need a crazy, eccentric billionaire. So they get Howard Hughes on board to create a shell company to search for these globules on the ocean floor. Then they spend 6 years building one of the most elaborate and, like, high-tech ships the world had ever seen, calling it the Hughes Glomar Explorer.
And this is all for one submarine?
This is all for one submarine. So it took them 6 years to finish building it, because this ship, first off, had to look, for all intents and purposes, like it was fully capable of deep sea mining. Because as far as anyone outside the CIA were supposed to know, and I think Howard Hughes was, knew as well. I don't think he was like an unwitting pawn. I think he was a willing accomplice in all this. But everyone had to think that this ship was genuinely going to go and start panning for minerals on the ocean floor. So it had to have all, like, miles and miles and miles of, like, cables and drilling equipment that could reach the ocean floor. And then also had to secretly, on the inside of it, have all the equipment needed for raising a massive nuclear submarine from the ocean floor as well. So that's why it took them 6 years to build it.
At that point, you might as well genuinely just start digging for minerals.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, apparently, because of all the false research and stuff, and because Howard Hughes was involved, apparently other people started setting up their own companies as well. Because they were like, holy shit, Howard Hughes is on board. This is a real thing.
It's like the gold rush, but all you need is a massive operation to mine the deepest part of the ocean.
Exactly. And then eventually, like I say, so they had to send this ship out, looking for all intents and purposes as a crazy billionaire but civilian ship, to the middle of the ocean. And then it actually had inside it had some literally it's like something from Thunderbirds or Stingray or something. Apparently it had some massive cavern underneath it. It's like a James Bond film. It has a massive cavern inside it with giant claws that could extend miles beneath the ocean to grapple and attach onto this submarine. And then in the end it didn't actually work, and it broke. And so they recovered a third of the ship, of the submarine.
How annoyed would you be if you were 5 years into building this submarine and then you find out the Russians have reclaimed the submarine? You're going, fuck!
Yeah, no. Oh, it's been amazing.
Or if it turned out not to have been a submarine to begin with, and all they recovered was a third of a massive whale.
It didn't work. They also kept it secret that they'd even recovered that much, which included some bodies and stuff, but they kept it to themselves for a few years. Yeah, that was that. But the whole thing cost $800 million in 1974 money, which is the equivalent of $4 billion
for one submarine.
One submarine.
I know it's a nuclear submarine. It's not I know it's worth getting, but it just seems so excessive.
That was the budget. So that's the budget for one part, for one mission, for one agency of the United States military machine.
Yeah.
They just have money to burn at that stage.
That's an unsuccessful one. So you have to assume. So they can reasonably say, oh, well, it was only a 4 billion mission. Yeah, partial success. Fuck it.
What next? Moon base.
So how did this all come to light? Is it just simply the clocks run out on them?
Yeah, I think eventually the Freedom of Information Act.
They can either disclose it to the public, or if there's still worthwhile information, they can renew the the classifications on them. But it does make me optimistic that if nothing else, everything else seems to be going to shit with the world. But at least if I stay alive, sort of in the next 50 years, I think we will learn quite a lot of interesting shit about what happened in the Cold War that we just don't know about.
Yeah, that's it. All the stuff that's already... I mean, we spoke about it before. You got the...
giving LSD to dolphins.
Getting dolphins high for some reason. There was the men who stare at goats, that whole, psychic powers thing. The gay bomb, that was one. They tried to come up with a bomb to make all their enemies turn gay. Because the Americans may have been at the cutting edge of science, but were firmly rooted in some rather conservative social views.
Yes.
And this is, like I say, this is all just the American side.
The
Russian side.
The
of
Russian
stuff
shit has got to be 10 times.
Yeah.
Half man, half bear soldiers.
Yeah, I have a feeling when all the stuff comes out from the Russian side, it'll be, not only will it be crazy cutting edge, but health and safety oversight will somehow be even less.
Yeah, but the thing is, I reckon with the Russians, we'll find out that they worked and they've had half bear, half man soldiers all this time. And they're deploying them in Syria right now. Or that, Putin's going to be the first successful one and he'll be the first half-bear world leader. Or he'll get, they'll... he's always got them pictures of him riding shirtless on a horse. They'll, transfuse him so that his legs are the actual horse. And he'll be the first centaur. Real-life centaur just clomping into the G20.
You know what? Wouldn't actually be that surprised. I mean, I'd be a little bit surprised. Don't get me wrong.
Yawn. Call
would
it
just
Putin.
pass it off as just another day. But, of all the things that could happen, like Putin turning himself into a man horse.
We've got a word for it. Centaur. I am man horse.
I think that covers the Cold War.
Batshit time. Totally irresponsible.
And on that note, I think it's your second topic.
What a surprisingly positive note to end on. So for my second topic, I'm going to move away from the Cold War, as it'd be weird to do two topics in a row on the same thing, I guess. I am, as the past few episodes, well, all of the previous episodes have proved, I'm an idiot, and therefore there are many things that I do not know. There are some things that I do know.
Well, that's just going to be your topic. It's just, I don't have a topic because it turns out I don't know much.
No, I do research, but I don't know anything. There are some things I do know, like how many Pringles you need to eat before you start feeling sad, and that, after years of dedicated research, is 27. If you eat less than that, it's a fun snack. After that, you've eaten too much of a tin meant for sharing, and you just feel sad, and that's...
How many are in a pack?
I'll say 50.
Okay, so you're about half a pack.
If you go over the halfway mark, then that's when Pringles start feeling sad. Even if you flip two on opposite sides to make like a duck's beak, you realise you're just on your own playing with crisps, and you're gonna have a long talk with yourself. But anyway, that's not what my topic's about. Although it is the subtext to all of my topics. And then there are things that not many people know, and for good reason. And one of those things is the location of the world's tallest trees. I don't know if you, as a kid, you read like the Guinness Book of World Records, and you'd sort of think that what is the tallest tree would be fairly common knowledge. And if you'd asked me before I learned about my topic today, I would have said the giant redwoods. With the word giant being in there, and that being a pretty good superlative in terms of how big things are. But there is a tree which is a kind of redwood, but it's a separate genus called the Hyperion, which is a great name.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
It's named after the Titan god of heavenly light.
Right, so again, it's a good adjective.
Yeah. And standing at nearly 400 feet tall, and estimated to be at least 600 years old, the exact location of the Hyperion tree is a secret known only to a handful of scientists, researchers, and overconfident woodpeckers.
What do we have a rough idea? Like, are we just taking this all on faith? Like, oh no, there's definitely a more giant tree. Okay, let's see it. Oh no.
Yeah, someone drew a picture of a massive tree and they went, well, how big is it? And they go, oh, it's miles away, so it must be huge. No, it's
millions of feet tall.
We know it's somewhere in California's Redwood Natural and State Parks.
Okay.
But that's a big area, and its exact location has been kept secret to prevent visitors from climbing it.
Surely you just look at the trees and see which one's taller.
Yeah, quite.
You're like, it's that one.
Quite how you hide a 400-foot tree is beyond me. Because you could look at the horizon and go, that tree is
one of these trees
bigger.
Yeah. I mean, I know they're all tall trees, but yeah, you just look for the one that's slightly taller and be like, it's there. Who verifies this? Like, how many people are allowed to know? Because obviously, so you have scientists who says, right, this tree is taller than the rest.
Thank you, Mr. Scientist.
Then somebody else has to come along and say,
and measure it.
And sort of verify it. And then somebody else has to be like, right, we can't let anybody else know this secret information. It makes you wonder what else they're keeping from us. These tree scientists.
These things are Cold War trees. And it's an experiment gone wrong.
We're hoping to build Ents, and it just didn't work. We just ended up with really tall trees and don't do anything.
Damn, we've got these massive sources of wood. Useless, burn them all down. I don't know the exact number of how many people know about it. From what, as always, thorough research I did, a small number of scientists and researchers, and, as I said, overconfident woodpeckers. But again, I don't know how you keep it secret. It just said it's in a remote area of the thing, so I don't know if there's literally like physical barriers put up around the trees to stop you getting in there, or if they're just relying on people not looking up.
Unless it's only marginally taller than the rest.
Oh no, they're like...
But then, but I mean, like, say you had a load of 400-foot trees, and then you had one that was like 400 and a half. So it's 6 inches taller than the rest. You'd be like, right, well, you can't really see that from like a distance away. But then that means somebody closely measured all the trees without... Are they taking the secret to their grave? Are they allowed to pass it down?
I mean, the thing is, if you can Google images, so there's plenty of pictures. So I think people have seen it from afar. They're just not allowed to climb on it and stuff because they're so old and so sort of rare. Because they're estimated between 600 and 700 years old.
That's fair old.
Just to put it in context, if you stack tins of soup.
Oh Jesus!
to the exact height of the Hyperion tree, you'd have to really like soup to get through them all in one sitting. It really makes you think that. I'm glad I could put it into context for you. It's just weird that something like that's not, like it'd be like them trying to keep the Statue of Liberty a secret because it's really tall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what's that over there? Don't mind. It's just a woman. Don't look at her.
She's just a normal sized woman. She's quite close.
Yeah, and not moving.
Actually, the Statue of Liberty is disappointingly short. Because if you actually look at it, like half of its height is just on a massive plinth. I mean, obviously it's taller than a normal woman.
Yeah.
Like I'm not disagreeing.
You, Mr. Scientist as well.
I'm not saying that it's like an average sized human that's just on a really tall pedestal. Have you seen that statue of Mother Russia? Well, I mean, it is what it is. It's a statue of a giant woman holding a massive sword in Russia. And it's taller than the Statue of Liberty, including the pedestal and the statue. This statue alone is taller than. And it has a fucking huge sword.
Which helps.
I think it's called Mother Russia or something like Calling to the Motherland or something like that. And then there's like this massive one of Genghis Khan as well in Mongolia.
Yeah,
There's just a lot of better statues than the Statue of Liberty. Although maybe nobody knows the exact heights or locations of some of these other ones. So.
Yeah, there's just height scientists covering up. Have you seen the big Buddha in China? He's cross-legged, so like he's losing out on a lot of height. But it's like I got close enough to work out that I could not, even if I was able to do a pull-up, I couldn't have climbed his big toe. So it's big.
That is big. All right, obviously, because this is an audio medium, I'm going to go on Twitter at Cooking with Grief without the G. On cooking, not on grief. It'd be Cooking with Reef. I'm going to share some images of these statues and trees that we're talking about. Because otherwise, just to give some context to these things.
Yeah, they're all big though.
Yeah, just massive. Just think of a normal-sized person, just bigger.
Or think of a tin of soup.
Yeah, just lots of tins of soup.
Loads, like more soup than you would expect a family of 4 to go through in a week. And this is a family of 4 who really like soup. You can see why I didn't do well in science. Stop talking about soup.
Just for sort of record, it was the Motherland Calls is the name of that Russian one. And it was the tallest statue in the world at its opening.
Nice. Well done, Russia.
Oh, yep. Giant Buddha in China is the second biggest.
Oh, so close.
I'm starting to think Buddha may have been massive, because just looking at this list of tallest statues, and a lot of them are Buddha.
What do you think? There's no artistic, interpretation there. They're all just literal.
Yeah.
They're like Buddha exoskeletons. Yeah. There we go. Tall things.
Tall stuff is tall. I think sums up this one.
So that's my second of my 2 topics. Chris, why don't you close us out with something really interesting?
Well,
no pressure.
That's for too much. So, have you ever had those moments, when you're really enjoying eating or drinking something, soup, for example, and you don't want to share it, so you sort of go out of your way to be petty and to make sure nobody else has any. When somebody, especially if you got sibling, you're just like, Can I have some? And you're like, no.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? Like, have you ever done something like that?
Yeah. I'm on board.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like licking the can or something. That's like, that's a traditional one. If you got a can of Coke and your brother wants it, you like lick the can. Like, you can't. I say this like I did this as a kid, not like now that I'm a fully grown adult. My brother comes over, he's like, "Can I have some?"
Yeah, it's got my germs on it. You don't want it now.
But anyway, I just wanted to highlight a very extreme version of this, where there's a legend in Scotland, in the Mull of Galloway, which is in the very southwest of Scotland, where they talk about there was a drink apparently called heather ale, made out of, so they say beer made out of the heather that grew, or that still grows all along the Scottish lowlands. And the legend goes that to preserve its secrets, people literally killed themselves to stop anybody else from having it.
Oh, that's some like Chinese emperor shit, like killing all his architects of his tomb.
Yeah. Well, at least this case, they basically. So what happened was, so you had the Picts of Scotland, who were like the semi-original. I don't know if they were the original inhabitants, but they fought the Romans along with. I think they were from the very north of Scotland, and then they migrated down when the Romans killed all the like Britons who lived in like the lowland Scotland whilst they were building Hadrian's Wall, and then they fought the Picts instead. So you had these Picts, and then a few hundred years after the Romans have left, they've taken over all of Scotland, and they're making this ale. And then the King of Ulster in Ireland, as I say, the Mull of Galloway is just across the water from Belfast. He's like, I want some of this sweet, sweet ale. And he invades Scotland.
Is that a direct quote?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
And so he invades Scotland, and apparently, there's no Picts left today, or at least culture-wise anyway. So they were wiped out. But apparently there were two left, a father and son. And the king said, look, you're the last two left. I want some of this sweet, sweet ale. Just tell me the recipe, and I'll let you live. And apparently, according to one version of the legend, the father said, I'll tell you, but only if you kill my son. Because if I tell you and my son hears, he'll be so outraged, he'll kill me. And so the king obliges and kills the son. And then the man laughs, and the father laughs and says, aha, thank you. I wasn't sure if he would have gone through with taking it to his grave, but I definitely will. And then gets himself executed.
Fuck, that is a gamble and a half.
All just to keep this recipe of a drink out of somebody else's hands.
Must have been fucking good.
Well, it was apparently the sweetest drink. Sweet, sweet drink. I don't know what was so good about it, especially considering its main ingredient was something that was plentiful and freely available on any gentle slope in the south of Scotland.
Yeah, surely, rather than
just some trial and error should have got you there.
Exactly, yeah, just boil heather and add it in various quantities to ale.
To the other. Yeah, it's like, surely there can't have been too many ingredients in it. You just, you know what I mean? It's sort of just
give it a go.
Work it out. Yeah.
To Scotland's credit, there are a few things I enjoy in life more than iron brew. It is a troubling obsession I have, and will be the future cause of all my dentist bills. But would I gladly see my entire family killed to protect its recipe? Probably not. Is there anything in your life that you have knowledge of that you'd be willing to die for?
Where the tallest tree in the world is.
The scientist going, you'll never take me alive. It's like, fine, just tell me. We don't want to kill you, mate. We'll have a look at the big tree.
Yeah. And the weird thing is, we say, lost forever, but why didn't they just try? Apparently nowadays, some people have actually
of course they have.
Tried to work out what they think it is, and they think they've recreated it.
And what's the feedback on it?
To die for. I know I shouldn't laugh at my own joke, but I'm really quite proud of that.
It's funny.
He even got a poem named after it by Robert Louis Stevenson called Heather Ale, a Galloway Legend. Oh, and then there's a really weird twist. There's an Irish legend which is basically exactly the same, only it's about an Irish king who refused to give it up to the Scots. So, who the fuck knows at this stage?
I come from a town that claims to have invented the black pudding. Is that something I'd be willing to die for?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I think it is.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what if it was Yorkshire people coming over and asking for the recipe to black pudding? Like, not on my life. Like, mate, it's easily Google. Like, you find it on Google and be like, nope, I'd rather die.
It's commercially available. Or like the rivalry between Yorkshire tea and Lancashire tea, which are essentially two of the exact same tasting teas.
I know this is sacrilege, but I'm gonna say Yorkshire tea is better. Yeah, I don't. Sorry.
Fucking
and that's me
all over
exiled. So that's me exiled forever now.
Well, you've handily pre-exiled yourself before making such a controversial statement. Left me
I couldn't
behind.
say it whilst I was there.
Oh no, you get lynched. Just briefly going back to the idea of like sibling rivalry around food.
Mm-hmm.
My mum grew up very poor, and as a consequence, that when food was put down on the table, you pretty much had to scoff it straight away. You know, just inhale your dinner, otherwise someone else would have it. 'Cause big Catholic family, and my uncle, her brother, tried to nick one of the sausages, so she put a fork through his hand. And he never tried again. But that is some hardcore.
So I always try and be polite around, like, around your mum anyway. But
especially now,
I'm going to be extra vigilant.
Yeah, definitely don't try and nick one of her sausages. Not that you ever. I imagine you ever would. Like, oh, hi, Chris. Like not seen you in years.
How many sausages you got left?
Are you eyeing up me Richmonds? It's a funnier phrase than it has any rights to be.
I just like your brand shout out there as well. It's not just any sausage, it's a Richmond.
Well, look, if they want to sponsor us, even if they're not, you make a quality product. And by quality, I mean the hooves and eyelids of pigs.
Put into an easily digestible package.
Yeah, mulched to perfection that I thoroughly enjoy on a gloomy Sunday morning. The highest quality pig anuses.
Yeah, we should get into marketing.
Yeah, we've got to stop giving such weird contradictory shout outs for products. Hey pals, make sure you keep listening after the outro, because there's a message from some fellow podcasters about their podcast, which we think you'll really enjoy.
So yeah, that basically wraps up this particular episode. You've seen the sausage go through the factory now, and yet another tortured metaphor has come out the other end. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again soon. So yeah, that's it. Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
We're going to remind you anyway, but subscribe to us on Twitter and leave us a nice review on iTunes.
That'd be great.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cooking with Grief. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to recommend it to a friend. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email cookingwithgrief@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter. That's @cookingwithgrief. If you'd like to hear more episodes, then please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you've got the time, then it'd be great if you could leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you.
Hi, it's Audra
Jason, and Matt
from Drinkopedia Podcast.
We're a bad education podcast that's like drunk history for the full curriculum.
We have new episodes every Thursday, and you can find us on most major podcast platforms.
Join us at the bar and follow us on Twitter @Drinkopedia Pod.